Hello and welcome to Talkernate History, the podcast where we,
Matt
and Max, talk about works of alternate history scenarios, and history in general. This episode, it's a little bit different from usual. We're just going to have a general discussion about artillery pieces, strategy, whatever we want to talk about.
Just history. There's no alternate history in this one.
You know, one of those history in general episodes that we do every once in a while. Mm-hmm. So I know, Matt, I know you have a particular piece of artillery that you're quite fond of.
The Sherman Calliope.
Yes.
That's a crazy... A Sherman Calliope is basically it's a rocket battery that's mounted on the turret of a Sherman. The Sherman has a functioning gun, but you stick these rockets on this mount that goes on the side and they shoot off the top. And it looks crazy. It's really cool, though.
It looks pretty ridiculous. How do you even fire this? Is there a crew inside of it at the time?
I don't know how. I think you have to trip something on the outside or some sort of thing like that. Mm-hmm. It looks like a Katusha, sort of, but mounted on top of a tank. So I guess it's mobile artillery battery, rocket battery. It would be very hard because you have to go outside and reload it. So it's kind of a one-use kind of, almost like an Ontos.
What's an Ontos?
An Ontos was a tank that the Marines used in Vietnam that was a battery of 106 millimeter recoilless rifles, mounted on this turret thing. But you had to go outside to reload them, so you could shoot them from inside the tank. But then once you fired it, you had to go out reload. Same thing with the Calliope. The Ontos means thing in Greek. You should look up a picture of it. It's crazy.
The thing, eh?
Yeah, thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Calliope's got this just crazy battery of rockets. It's pretty cool to see a video of it, or a picture of it shooting. But it's one of the many crazy variants of the Shermans that came around during that era.
Hobart's Funnies, right?
Sort of Hobart's Funnies, but the Americans came up with, you had the Sherman Flail, the crab, that had the to break the mines. You had a Sherman Dozer. You had the Sherman Jumbo, which was like extra armor on it.
Jumbo?
Yeah, the Sherman Jumbo. You had a Sherman Firefly, which we've talked about.
Yes.
The Easy
Which is
8.
not a tank, apparently. It's a tank destroyer, technically, because...
Ooh, okay, it doesn't have a bow gun. Okay, ooh, okay. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. I'll still call it a tank. I don't care. You have the Easy 8. You have all those crazy versions, and this is just one of those. Oh, the 105 millimeter Sherman had 105 millimeter artillery. Sherman flamethrower.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like the crocodile, the Churchill crocodile.
Yeah, the Churchill crocodile, and there's also a version with the Sherman. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you had Shermans that had diesel engines rather than gas. Most American tanks use gas engines, but they use diesel for the Marines in the Pacific, and the British use diesel.
What? Really? Mm-hmm. Didn't the Germans or the Russians use
diesel mostly?
Diesel?
In today, I think most tanks usually are diesel, or they use like a mix of diesel and regular gas, because regular gas burns better than diesel. But the problem is it's harder to turn a diesel engine on. They actually show this in the movie Kelly's Heroes, where the Tiger tanks are just sitting in the square, but they're running their engines every once in a while, and that's what's called turning over the engine. Have you ever heard that? For a diesel engine, you have to keep the spark plug, or the plug for it is a little bit different. It doesn't work the way a gas engine works. I'm sure someone here knows more about these engines than me and is freaking out when I say these things, but as far as I'm aware, is that because just starting from stop on a diesel engine on one of those tanks was really hard to do, and it took a while. So what they do is they turn the engines over to keep it kind of warm.
Hey, sorry. Quick disclaimer here. This is Max, recording this many, many, many days later. I was just editing this episode and did a little bit of fact-checking and realized that a lot of what we just said is totally and completely incorrect. German tanks almost exclusively ran on gasoline, which is funny because diesel fuel is actually way more efficient than gasoline, and Germany had really, really big fuel problems. Allegedly, the explanation I've been given for that is that you can't make diesel out of charcoal and soybeans and all those synthetic fuel options the Germans had. I don't know if that's really true, but suffice it to say, yeah, German tanks didn't really run off diesel unless it was some kind of special late war desperation kind of thing. And also the reason why German tanks would sometimes run their engine every once in a while is partially to keep it warm, but that's only in the winter. Mainly it's to charge the batteries, because if you leave your radio on all the time, being available to listen to transmissions, it's going to run that battery down. So you got to run the engine to recharge the batteries. In the movie Kelly's Heroes, pretty much the only reason why is for plot reason. It's just so that Oddball can get his Sherman into town. It's not really realistic. A lot in that movie is not terribly realistic, even though it does try a lot harder than some World War II movies of the time. I'm looking at you, Battle of the Bulge. I'm looking right at you. But yeah, just wanted to pop in and just correct ourselves real quick before we got 10,000 comments explaining to us how we're dumb. Okay. And it's impossible to just switch an engine from one to the other easily.
Between tanks?
To be like, okay, we found the supply depot full of gasoline, but everything runs on diesel. You're screwed, right? You can't do anything about that?
Well, no, you can't. You can't put diesel fuel in a regular gas car.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You're in real trouble. Yeah, no, it's, I don't know. But I'm sure if it's a military, they'll find something that can run on gas. Yeah. It's interesting enough that you mentioned that made me think, as I remember reading in The Guns at Last Light that a lot of German trucks at the end of the war actually ran on wood. They had like wood-burning furnaces in there, and that provided the power to run some sort of, maybe, I don't know, a steam, something. They were burning wood, and they figured out a wood engine, basically, for a...
Steam cars?
No, not
steam
cars.
What is this, SM Sterling?
I got the steam car. Everyone loves steam, don't they?
It's these damn oil combines that are keeping steam cars down, you see.
Yeah, because that's what I want to be driving in front of is a bunch of red hot steam.
Hold on, let me stoke the boiler here real quick.
Yeah, wood burning engines were a thing though in German vehicles by the end of the war.
Yikes.
But getting back to artillery.
The V weapons,
yes.
V1, V2.
Are they artillery? Sure.
I guess. I mean, a Katusha is a rocket, right?
Katusha's a rocket, yeah.
That's a rocket, too.
Little Kate, that's what it means.
Yeah,
Katusha.
yeah.
People still use them today.
Yeah, in Ukraine.
Yeah, let's just turn this. It's like a technical, like a really souped up technical.
Yeah. The ultimate evolution of the technical.
Yeah.
But, the vengeance weapons.
V1 and V2.
And the cousin of the vengeance weapons that nobody likes to talk about, the V3 gun.
Yeah, the V3.
The super gun, which was this project where they were going to have, back in World War I, they had Paris guns.
Mm-hmm.
Like these guns
Paris
that were
gun,
made to shell Paris. This is
Which they did. They did shell Paris.
Yeah. These gigantic guns. But this is like even further than that. These were supposed to shell London. So it's like, how the hell do you reach London? Well, the answer is to have this ridiculously long gun buried underground. And what they did is that they had all these chambers along the barrel, like these side chambers with propellant inside of them. So as the shell was going further down the barrel, you would have successive explosions propelling it even faster all the way. It's a very, very difficult engineering problem. They actually ended up making a couple of them, but of course they never got the chance to shell London because this was 44 at the time, I think. So instead, they used it to shell Luxembourg.
Luxembourg City, yes.
Yes. Killed like a dozen people. It's just a complete waste of time.
Been to Luxembourg.
Have you? Mm-hmm. Is it nice?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's not that different from Belgium.
Oh my God, we're gonna get Luxembourgish people.
The Duke of Luxembourg, Grand Duchy.
Grand Duchy of
Luxembourg. The Grand Duke is gonna call me and scream at me.
How dare you?
No, but V3, kind of dumb because its problem with is it's stationary. So it can only shell like a particular zone.
Also, once the Allies find out where you are, you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna bomb the hell out of you.
Then you have we didn't even really talk about the V1 and the V2.
Yeah,
V1, the Doodle Bomb.
Doodle Bomb? I've heard Buzz Bomb, but never Doodle Bomb.
I've heard Doodle Bomb or Buzz Bomb. There's a recording of what one sounds like. I've heard it on YouTube. It's pretty crazy.
Is it like a whistle? What is it?
Yeah, it's just really shrill. It's really interesting, but people could hear it. But they flew slow enough that planes could actually shoot them down, really fast ones. So they used the Mosquito. De Havilland Mosquitoes were used. Tempest and Typhoon fighters were fast enough. I think under certain circumstances, Mustangs and also Gloucester Meteors were used to shoot them down.
Nice.
And anti-aircraft guns could shoot them down. And the V2 was a real problem because it was supersonic. So people didn't even know when it was coming. So late 1944 and early 1945 were a rough time to be in London, actually, because they had to re-evacuate people who had come back after the Blitz because German air raids happened from 41 to 44. They were rare, and they were mainly attacks on coastal areas, attacks by single-engine PF-109s and FW-190s attacking coastal areas. Occasionally you get a night bombing every once in a while, but V-1s and V-2s, actually, people who had come back had to re-leave. And thousands of people were killed by them.
Not to mention Britain, but also Antwerp.
Antwerp was attacked by V-2s, yeah. One of the reasons why they wanted to clear out that area near Antwerp is that get those V-2s away.
Yeah.
But then that's the origin of the American rocket program.
Yes, Werner von Braun.
Yeah.
It's so weird in October Sky at the end of it. It's like, oh, Mr. von Braun, it's such an honor to meet you. And like,
the man who used slave labor in these factories to build all this
the
stuff?
guy who we go to like, what is it? Can't remember the exact one, but going to concentration camps and like all these, slave labor guys are like building these rockets and stuff. It's just
the middle bow? They had a massive underground complex where they built a lot of them. The German program started at Peenemünde, which is in the Baltic coast.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
That was bombed. The British bombed the hell out of it because they figured out where it was. So they
did they ever use V2s and V1s against the Russians? Or
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I recall.
Okay.
Maybe. But long story short is that the plane was a more accurate. Strategic bombing was more used at the time.
Terror bombing is not going to win the war. People are not going to, Britain's a democracy, but they're committed enough to this war that they're not going to just stop because of that.
Yeah. Craziness. So what till we move on to next? Well, they have the Churchill with the petard mortar.
Yes.
You ever seen one of those pictures? It's crazy. It's like
the Churchill, by the way, the best tank of all time. By the way, just wanted to point that out. I mean, it's so good. It's got everything.
It's a fine tank, but
it's true. It's true.
Not the best of all time. Yeah. It's very ungainly. The heavy tank is a concept that doesn't exist anymore because it used to be light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks, and then we moved to MBTs, main battle tanks, kind of the combination of all of them.
Cruiser tanks. That's the future.
We need more Crusader tanks.
Those weird, like, what would you even call that? Like,
I can't even describe the shape of their turrets.
Yeah. It's not a trapezoid. It's two trapezoids on top of one another.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Speaking of the Cromwell, remember that movie I showed you once? That animated Japanese movie with like the girls in high school and stuff?
That was weird. I did not like that.
We watched that for about 10 minutes and you're like, let's stop.
Yeah. No, I'm done.
I don't really want
I'm done with this.
But one of them was a
Cromwell.
Churchill.
A Churchill?
Oh, the Cromwells too, I think. They were definitely
great idea for armor. Make it very vertical and flat.
There's a KV-2 in it too. But the petard mortar, though, just ridiculous looking. It's this huge round thing. You put these giant shells in.
Mm-hmm. If you want to get the things with the biggest millimeters ever, are mortars usually. There may be some cannon that's like, you want something you ever see something that's 500, 600 millimeters, 400 millimeters, it's a mortar.
Huh. Like a spigot mortar?
Yeah, those things. Yeah.
The Japanese used those in Okinawa. They did.
Yeah. Well,
for like demoralization of infantry, not as much to actually, hit things accurately. Because they had to put them in caves so that nobody could see where they were. So they had to fire from stationary areas, just blasting all that stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, some of those mortars are massive. And talking about big guns from World War II. Railway guns.
Oh, yes.
Railway guns.
Huge.
The Schwerer Gustav, the biggest gun ever made.
Yeah.
And only used to bomb one city.
Really?
Sebastopol.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Because of the fortifications around the city. It seems like a waste of resources.
That's Nazi Germany for you. Just wasting massive amounts of steel and manpower and engineering talent for nothing. For a complete waste of time.
Yeah. But it was big and scary.
It was a really big gun, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
the biggest.
How can you stop this thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, railway guns were the Paris gun in World War I was a railway gun.
Okay.
So the Germans have a history of railway guns.
You know who else really likes not so much railway guns, but armored trains? Trotsky, big fan of those. riding around in armored trains during the First World War and also the Russian Civil War.
Stalin preferred armored trains over. He didn't like to fly. He preferred an armored train.
That's right. Yeah, that's why they had all these conferences in like Tehran and Yalta and stuff, places you could get to
by train from the Soviet Union.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he had to fly a little bit for Tehran, and it was actually like he was terrified of flight because he thought people would sabotage it, which is likely that they sabotaged other people's planes. So you can understand his concern with that.
I mean, it happens during the Spanish Civil War. The two main generals, Sanjorjo and I can't remember, Moya or more. I can't remember.
I don't know
his
much
name.
about the Spanish Civil War.
Both of them died in plane accidents. The first one, Sanjorjo, died because they jammed too many suitcases full of uniforms into the back of it, so it was too heavy. So they couldn't. I think they couldn't clear the tree line or whatever. So they just crashed immediately.
Oh shit!
And Moya, just like a freak accident, died in a plane crash. So Franco, number 3 man, becomes the head of the Nationalists.
Franco.
Yeah.
Lasting until 1975.
Yeah, and Salazar.
And Portugal lasted just about as long too.
Just about as long too. Yeah, and he predated Franco.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
What about? I'm trying to think. Other artillery.
Other pieces of.
Well, then you have self-propelled artillery.
Yes.
Is that artillery or not? I say yes. It's the use of it, not It doesn't have to just be guns on wheels.
What's an assault gun?
Well, an assault gun's like a Stug. Okay. Or like an Su-100, an Su-85. It's a gun mounted in a chassis of a tank, but it only faces one way. So to move the gun, you have to move the tank.
But what if that gun then destroys a tank? Is it a tank destroyer? Or I know.
I don't. I mean,
what the hell is this?
Yeah, assault guns were never a thing that were really, they were German and Soviet, but they're not something the Americans. Well, we did create a prototype that T6 or whatever, this massive.
Oh, is that the double treaded thing?
Yeah, double treaded with one gun. It's this is so stupid. We can't do anything with it. There's no roads or bridges that can hold this. Oh my God.
It's like the Maus tank.
Yeah, the Maus. Yeah. Or you ever seen a Jog Tiger? Saw one, and I went to the Bovington Tank Museum. They're massive. It's crazy. But the damn thing's turret doesn't move. So, what are you supposed to do? You have to move the whole thing.
Why not just get one of those anti-tank guns? Because you're not going to be zipping around in a field. Hold on, let me just
let me just do a 3-point turn, kind of a 3-point turn.
It's an ambush device. It's not a.
Yeah, it's an ambush. The Elephant, same thing. The German Elephant, great gun. The 88L71. Fantastic gun. Better than the gun on the regular Tiger because it's got better velocity. But again, it's made for ambushing and long range, on a hill from far away, you see the enemy coming straight at you. You know that the first mounted anti-tank guns, they used them in North Africa, the Americans used them. They just mounted 75 millimeter guns on top of trucks. Not very good. They didn't work very well. And half tracks. That was a half track, not a truck, a half track.
So what's the deal with half tracks? Because they used to do half tracks all the time in World War II. The Germans had them. The Americans had them. I assume the Soviets had them too. But now nobody does them anymore. What's the deal?
Well, now you have APCs. That's taken over some of the role. And those are because they're fully treaded, they can go some places that half tracks couldn't because a half track has wheels and treads.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess they just wanted to go one way or the other.
One way or the other.
I like a half track. It's pretty cool.
It is cool. Put anti-aircraft guns on it.
Mm-hmm. The quad 50s, meat choppers, what they used to call them.
Meat choppers.
The quad 50s on the back of a half track. Well, what do you think 4 50 cals are going to do?
Yeah, that's a good
Excellent
point.
for not just taking down a plane, but if you attack infantry formation attacks that. Good old 50 cal. Apparently, they have no plans to retire it ever.
Yeah, good.
It's a great gun.
It works.
Fantastic gun. It's almost 100 years old.
Imagine how much money they would spend replacing it.
With what?
The F-35 version of let's replace the 50 caliber machine gun. What are you going to do?
Yeah, what's that? 20 millimeter?
Yeah, what are you going to come up with?
It's a classic.
Ma Deuce.
It's great,
It works.
If you were going to replace it with that automatic grenade launcher thing. Boom, 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 boom.
The X something or other.
Yeah. Well, they have those. They use them, but they're not. I mean, the 50 cal's just got such utility. Yeah. Why ever? The same thing with the B-52. They're not planning to retire it until the 2050s. And it's by that point, it'll be 100 years old, the design. That'd be like us now being like, we're gonna still use the the F4F Wildcat in combat.
The twin Mustang. We're gonna keep using.
Yeah, the twin Mustang. Yeah, P-38 Lightning. Although the funny thing now is that in so much of the conflict the United States has been in the last 20 years is against insurgents. And if they don't have anti-aircraft weapons, you really technically could use a Lightning against someone. I mean, or a P-47 Thunderbolt. I mean,
what are you going to do?
Paint sharks' mouths on them. And,
Well, that's what they do with the Warthog. They
do.
That,
A-10. So. Great. Thunderbolt 2. That's what it is. Thunderbolt 2. The F-35 is the Lightning 2. When's the Mustang 2 going to come? Well, they already have it. The twin Mustang. The new Spitfire.
The triple Mustang.
The triple Mustang.
Just a guy in the middle.
Triple Mustang. We're going to bring back the Hurricane. It's a great
Hurricane.
Hurricane.
That's how you pronounce it.
That's how it's pronounced. That's how the British.
Hawker Hurricane.
The Hawker Hurricane. Spitfire.
So what precisely is artillery, if you think about it? Because is a drone strike artillery?
It's more of an airstrike.
It's more of an airstrike. Mortars? Are mortars artillery? Like a little tiny infantry carried mortar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I would say artillery is something that's heavier than... technically a mortar is manpower. It can be, moved by a person, but it's like heavier than most handheld weapons. So like a mortar, a rocket fired from the ground. I mean, you could say an airstrike is flying artillery. I don't know. It just seems different. And it's also because artillery is a little less, you can be more precise with an airstrike, I think. And artillery has always been bigger guns. It's just, what is a piece of artillery is just a really, really big version of a rifle. Or a really big version of a pistol. I mean, if you think about it, it's a gun.
Yeah.
It is a gun. It's just a really, instead of 9 millimeters, it's 120 millimeters.
Like when I was a kid and I saw the guns of Navarone, I thought it was going to be like, little pew pew, like handheld guns.
No.
No. But like, what about a rifle grenade? Is that artillery or is that?
No, I think that's man portable. Would you call flamethrower artillery?
No, a flamethrower is an energy weapon in the purest sense.
That's true. You have, I think you would say, I think it's also the way a gun is used, because I wouldn't say like a tank, direct fire by a tank. Also, I think it's indirect. Artillery is indirect, because like you can use a tank as artillery and direct fire. If there's a defensive position and the tank rolls up and aims its gun right at it and blows it up, that's direct fire. But also you could roll that tank up to a place. It could elevate its gun as far up and it could provide artillery fire. Indirect. I think it's indirect.
Right. Whereas direct for artillery is over open sights, which if you ask Jake Featherston, he can tell you all about that.
Yeah.
A whole book about it, actually.
Yeah. You could use canister. They actually still have a version of canister. You know that, right?
Really?
Called they give it out to artillery, and the Abramses have it. It's called beehive rounds, and it's a bunch of flechettes packed inside it. Turns your imagine 120 millimeters of flechettes being fired at someone.
I thought flechettes were against the Geneva Convention, though.
I don't think so.
I guess not. Huh. Beehive.
A lot of things are against the Geneva Convention.
Is using fire as a weapon?
White phosphorus is apparently. Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
Flamethrowers, I think, are still.
Because white phosphorus is not only burns people up, it also poisons stuff.
Yeah.
Like you drop it in a well or something, it's completely unusable now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think indirect is probably a good way to define it, because that's the difference between direct fire and that sort of thing.
Gas. Is dropping poison gas artillery, or is that?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
I'm very conventional about how I define my artillery, Max.
It's just guns, damn it.
Yeah, it is. Well, and then you get into the old artillery.
Unless it's rockets. And then it's
rockets, yeah. Then you get into old like artillery, like you go to the Civil War era and you had like the brass Napoleon smoothbore, and then you had rifled guns.
Parrot guns.
Yeah, and then you get back to really old artillery, like the artillery used in medieval sieges, and they would sometimes like dig holes in the ground, lean like the gun on the earth of whenever they dug up, and they'd fire it from there. I mean, read about the cannons used to break the walls of Constantinople, and it's insane how big they were.
That's right. Yeah,
they literally fired boulders.
It's like multiple parts or whatever. They had to be casted in pieces.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Huh.
Well, that's the first gun ever. Were literally little handheld cannons. If you watch Tales of the Gun, which some of them are still on YouTube, I think I'm going to watch some of those soon again. Oh. Tales of the Gun, and they have like they're hand cannons. It's literally like a tube, and you hold it like underneath your arm, and you just like put a match and pew, shoot a little. Yeah.
I guess the first artillery is Chinese. Well, no, with gunpowder it's Chinese. Yeah. But I mean, like trebuchets are artillery too.
Yeah, you could say that's a form of artillery. A catapult is a form of artillery. Yeah. Indirect, I guess. Yeah. Anything that's shooting up in the air over and arcing and using that.
Yeah. So mainly ground-based and indirect.
Indirect. I think that's a good way to define it.
Okay.
Yeah, because air is different. Because air, you could, you're right above them. With artillery, you're kind of indirect. I mean, obviously with a forward air observer nowadays, I guess you could probably get satellite imaging or whatever. But it's behind the lines. There's some distance involved.
What about like a cruise missile or a Scud missile for that matter?
Scud missile. That's ICBMs and stuff like that fall almost into a different category, I think. You can drop a cruise missile out of a B-52.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
They did. Yeah, they have done it.
What about a space shuttle? Just the doors open.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like Moonraker.
The first Space Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Well, now we have the Space Force. So that's our real future now.
In space.
Well, once you get up into space, you can just drop rods.
Well, that's the thing. That wasn't that in one of those. I stopped paying attention to the Call of Duty after like about 2012 or so. But wasn't one of them the weapon was like it utilized kinetic energy?
Yeah.
Like just rods dropped from space.
I never, I didn't play Call of Duty Ghosts, but I read about it, and it's something like there's like a war between the United States and some kind of South American Confederacy or whatever.
What?
And
jeez,
I don't know. Yeah, that's the problem with Call of Duty is that it got rid of history. There's no history in Call of Duty anymore. It's all zombies and future, like people jumping around and parkouring around with like power armor and stuff. And like, what the hell is this?
Where's my World War I Call of Duty? If they could do the Battlefield, then they could do Civil War. Then we load my Enfield rifle, one shot at a time.
Time to even the odds.
Yeah, exactly. Love Darkest of Days.
With
you get man this Gatling gun. We put this Gatling gun on this wagon. You've got to provide support.
I bought Darkest of Days off of Steam, and I can't get the damn thing to work.
That is disappointing.
That's the only reason we haven't done a Darkest of Days episode is that I can't get any footage from it. Unfortunately,
I remember there was a game called Gettysburg Armored Warfare.
You told me about that. Yeah.
And my favorite part about it is not only do you have tanks in the Civil War, but there's like you can choose one of the ground types as a guy imagine a guy in a regular old Union uniform. But he's got a handheld minigun in his hand. And every time you would select him on like the selection menu, you go, for Lincoln. And it's just like, but it's not, it's like auto. It's not like, that would be hilarious. A hand crank Gatling. It's like, what Jesse Ventura has in Predator.
Oh, wow.
Old Painless, whatever.
Yeah, I don't got time to bleed.
Ain't got time to bleed.
They're dug in like an Alabama tick. Fantastic. Yeah, if they made a Battlefield Civil War game, like there'd be a class which is carrying around Gatling guns.
Bum, 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 bum.
Because like Battlefield 1, that World War I game, everyone's got a submachine gun running around. It's like, that's not World War I.
They did have submachine guns.
They did, but in like 1918.
Very limited, 1918. Yeah, limited. But you can carry around a Lewis gun the whole time.
There literally are like people who carry around Lewis guns and stuff. It's pretty silly. I understand. Otherwise, the game would just be a bunch of Mosin Nagants and like. I mean, I understand why. I'm not really knocking them seriously, but like.
Let me pick up this Vickers gun in my hand. That reminds me of the Archer. We need a Lewis gun and twin Vickers.
They would put them on Jeeps. Like the Desert Rats, twin Vickers on the front of it.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with a good old... It was good enough for the Sopwith Camel. It's good enough for me.
Nothing, damn it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Would you like to know an interesting fact?
Yes.
The man who designed the Sopwith Camel died in 1989.
Wow.
Sir Thomas Sopwith. Lived to be 101. Yes.
That's quite a British name, Sopwith.
Sopwith. Oh yeah, that's totally British.
Can't be
only if
else.
it was Cecil Sopwith.
Cecil
Sir Thomas Sopwith. So he started, because in the early days of aviation, it was very young people kind of pioneered it. So he started the company in like 1911 or 1912, and he lived to be 101. So he died in 1989. Can you imagine that? He's seen everything from, I mean, really, you know, flight starts in 1903, and by 1969, we put someone on the moon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, no, that's World War One, the artillery, king of the battlefield, queen of the battlefield. I've heard both of them. I mean, that's what kills the most people in World War One and World War Two. It's artillery.
Yeah.
And like, you know, people get literally buried by it. Like when we were at Verdun last year, they were talking about how like not too long before we were there, they'd found like a German soldier who had been buried by like artillery. And if you go to the ossuary there's like 250,000 unknown soldiers, the remains of them there. And they're like blown apart. And it's because artillery. That's what's killing people.
Yeah.
You know,
like Beevor was talking about in one of his books that in World War II, the Allies are so antsy about getting casualties that they would just defer to bombing and artillerying like areas where there are troops. So instead of going into a little village and clearing it out, it's just shell the crap out of it.
in Vietnam, they call them free fire zones.
Free fire zone.
Just level it. You just hit it with artillery, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the artillery too. I mean, remember, there's even different classes of it because you have, let's see, in the United States, you have the 105 millimeter, the 100. I think is there 120 now? 155, the long toms from the old days, and now they have like the Paladins have the 155s on them. Is there 175? I know the Soviets had like 200 millimeter stuff.
What?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Huh. Well, Soviets did love their artillery.
They did. Oh, man. They did love their artillery. If you ever played the game Steel Panthers and some of their scenarios, like it'll be endless. The artillery barrages are gone for 10 minutes before you can even start the scenario because the Soviets are just pounding everything to smithereens. It's like, holy crap. But, I mean, artillery soften up a position. I mean, World War I, artillery is king, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know? And in World War I, what they would do is that when they were going to have a big offensive, what they would do is they would just have artillery pound the other side for days, days and days to try to cut all the wire and cut all the communication wire.
Yeah. But you're also letting them know right where you're going to attack.
Exactly. So that's why in World War II they wouldn't do crap like that. They were smart enough to realize that it's more of a war of movement than a war of sitting and just pounding each other with explosives for months and months.
Exactly. That's why you have like the Priest, the mobile 105 millimeter, you know, mobile artillery becomes more of a thing.
Counter battery fire.
The rolling barrage, they came up with that in World War I, where the barrage is kind of right before the soldiers are following it, so they don't do these day long. That's happened at the Somme for like weeks. They were pounding it. It's like, oh, I wonder where they're going to attack.
And if you're Russian, you can continue your artillery bombardment while your own soldiers are on the position.
Yeah, exactly. They're all from the Gulag anyway, so yeah. Penal battalions.
Zeks.
Yeah. Zeks, penal, yeah. A good example of rolling artillery barrages, you kind of see it in the movie a little bit, Bridge Too Far. Yeah, that scene with Michael Caine and all the tanks. That's kind of a rolling artillery barrage a little bit.
30 Corps or whatever, they're on the road.
30 Corps, yeah. Guards Armored Division.
Yeah. The Irish Guards.
The Irish Guards, yeah.
Are they North Irish or are they
North Irish, yeah.
Okay. Because it wouldn't just be volunteers. It's like,
Wild geese, reversed wild geese, fighting for Britain.
So, interesting thing is that in Ireland, when Adolf Hitler died, the prime minister or whatever of Ireland went to the German embassy and signed a note of like
condolence. Oh, Jesus!
So sorry for your loss for losing the great Adolf Hitler.
Oh God!
Like, you know, there's being mad at Britain. And then there's just
there's being mad at Britain.
They're taking this way too far.
Seriously, yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
He's not an Orangeman, obviously.
No. I remember there was some actor. I think he was one of the Doctor Who's. I don't care at all about Doctor Who. It was like David Tennant, I think, or whatever. And they did one of those shows where they look into your ancestry. And they told him, like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but one of your grandparents was an orange man. And he's literally crying. Just, oh, no. Oh.
Well, you can't control that.
No, you can't. Why are you going to be... It's like, what is it?
That's like saying, your grandfather was under 6 feet tall. Oh, God, no. It's like, well, what are you supposed to do about that?
Yeah, like, how's that going to change your life? Like, what is it? Ben Affleck or whatever found out that his great-great-great-grandfather was like a slave owner or something, and he was like, you better not put this on the air. I will sue the crap out of you if you do that.
it is. I mean, you don't have to. We're not saying you have to like it.
Just say like, oh man, that sucks.
It sucks. But what are you supposed to? You don't choose your parents.
It's not in your genetics that you're going to want to enslave people.
It's just. It is. It is what it is.
Just live with it. That's life. You know. German people have to live with the legacy of Nazi Germany. That's just life.
There's a very interesting documentary, and it's about people who are descended from notable Nazis, and they talk about like that. And it's interesting. One of them, this was really crazy, was he's the grandson of the guy who is the commandant of Auschwitz, and he goes to Auschwitz and meets people, like a Jewish group of students who are there from like Israel, and it's like a very, you know, and he's like, and he's completely repudiated his family legacy, yeah,
like.
He wasn't going on a victory tour there, that's for sure.
Although Rudolf Hess's son, does a lot of conspiracy theory stuff and whatnot. But sorry to interrupt.
Rudolf Hess, born in Alexandria, Egypt.
What? Mm-hmm. Rudolf Hess, really?
I think so.
Wow.
It's in Egypt. I know it's in Egypt. I think it's Alexandria. He died, and remember, he was 93 years old when he died in the 1980s.
Well, friggin'. Goering's brother was born in Namibia, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because his dad was in charge of the colony there.
German Southwest Africa.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Namibia. Yeah, Germany had colonies in Africa. Tanzania.
Yeah, they had colonies.
Cameroon. German Southwest Africa.
Which I think Cameroon means shrimp originally. I think that's what it means in like Portuguese or something. I'm not sure. I think that might be the case. Also, Germany had colonies in freaking Southeast Asia.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, they had part of
Bismarck Islands.
The Bismarck Islands and part of Papua New Guinea.
Well,
in 1914 was German.
That's right. Oceania, not Southeast.
And Tsingtao.
Tsingtao,
where that beer comes from. Very good beer.
It's all right.
I like it.
I've been to the factory where they make the stuff over there. It was interesting. It was very interesting.
Yeah. The Japanese attacked it during World War I. That was their contribution. Good job, guys.
Thanks. Pivotal to winning World War I.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
They should put that in the Call of Duty. Like, here you are. You've got to take Tsingtao.
I've got to liberate the brewery here.
Yeah. They're holed up in the brewery. We're going to have to call in an airstrike. You little, Wright flyer comes by. Some guy throwing bombs out of it.
Some guy with, a 1911 just shooting people.
Talking about World War I planes are crazy. I love World War I planes. They're so interesting. I talked about the Sopwith Camel earlier.
Yes.
The SE-5A, though, may even have been better.
Not familiar with this. Is that a pup?
Well, let's think of some notable British planes from World War I. The Bristol Scout, 1915, 1916. The DH-2, which is a pusher plane. Have you ever seen a pusher plane?
No, I don't know what that is.
They call them tractor planes, which are like the standard, the engine's out front, and then the pusher is the engine is back. So the advantage with the pusher is you could put a gun facing forward and shooting. The problem is if you fly out of it, you go straight into the propeller. And they're just not as maneuverable.
Huh.
But then you had the DH-2, you had the Martinside Elephant. That's my favorite. This is a gigantic plane. Seriously. You had the Sopwith Pup, Sopwith Camel. You had the Sopwith Triplane, one of my favorites. The triplane first in combat was used by the Allies.
So it's
not the Red Baron.
Oh, 3 wings.
Not
3 engines.
No, 3 wings. Triplane, like the Red Baron triplane. Well, the Allies started first, Sopwith Triplane. You have the Newport, that's the French, and the Spad. The SE-5, which has an inline engine rather than what's a rotary engine. So a lot of the early engines that were used on planes at the time, the engine itself spun with the propeller.
What? That's insane.
I know, right?
That's totally
It's
crazy.
interesting too, is that rotary engines, they a lot of the oil turned into droplets and it would go into the pilot's face. And a lot of pilots at the time actually would get very sick, severe diarrhea from it.
Really?
Yeah. But this SE-5A and planes like that had inline engines, like the Bristol Scout, a Bristol Fighter, had inline engines, so the engine was stationary rather than moving around, which made it more accurate because your bullets, the bullets are just going. There's with a rotary engine, the guns are moving, so they're less accurate. And like a Spad had a rotary engine. The German planes, like the great German plane of World War I, is the Fokker D7. It's not everyone thinks of the Fokker DR1, the triplane, the Red Baron's triplane. Yeah. Those weren't used for very long, and they weren't that good at a lot of stuff. Maneuverable. Triplanes are maneuverable, but not very fast. The Albatross, that was the classic German plane of World War I.
And don't they use those in the Great War books?
They do, yes.
Yeah.
And they also have the Fokker Eindecker, the monoplane.
Yes.
First plane to ever have a synchronized machine gun on front of it.
Synchronized?
So that means you can shoot through the propeller.
the interrupter,
The interrupter gear, synchronization, interrupter, whatever you prefer.
Well, you put the propeller in the back, you can shoot all day long.
Well, that's the thing. But those planes are not as maneuverable.
Right. The Japanese had one of those. They had an interceptor with the engine in the back.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter the more advanced planes got the engine in the back thing, but in World War I, you had the pusher planes, and they kind of tried to do that for a while, and it just didn't work as well. Now you had all sorts of, But then most planes now are, they're jets. It doesn't matter where you put the freaking engine on.
It doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, pusher planes are a thing of the past. It's tractor. You're pulling the engine's pulling you rather than pushing. Right. I think it has to do with it's more efficient too to have the engine. I don't know that much about it. Mm-hmm. But artillery.
Yes. Nuclear artillery.
Oh yeah, Davy Crockett.
You can fire nukes out of artillery if you really want to.
What a great idea!
Not a great idea. Full disclosure. So it's like this little tube, looks like a Panzerfaust basically, except instead of firing like a little shaped charge, it's firing a damn nuclear bomb. If you've ever seen one of those blow up, they don't look very big. The nuke that comes out of it.
Yeah, of course it can't be that big because you don't want to be destroyed by it too.
Yeah, exactly. Though it's still making radiation and whatnot, so
tactical nukes.
You don't want to be anywhere close to that, really.
No. Why would you do that? So dumb.
They also had like a much larger piece of artillery, a M65 atomic cannon.
Seems like a bad idea too.
They stationed them in South Korea and Western Europe, but also a very bad idea, especially Western Europe. If you're trying to defend any territory, if you're within firing range of a cannon, you don't. That's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Because hopefully you're going to be advancing past that nuclear blast, but your guys are going to have to march through it and go through all that.
Yeah,
that
irradiated soil. And,
That's a bad idea. Buster Jango, if you've ever heard of that, or Buster Jangle, I think is the name of it. It was a atomic test in New Mexico or something where they blew up this very small nuclear weapon and they had people march into it, into the area. Terrible idea. I don't care if you're wearing a gas mask. This is bad. Very bad.
That's insane.
Did you know that the French were doing atomic tests into the 90s?
So was the U.S.
Well, okay.
I think there was a U.S. nuclear test in the 90s, if I recall.
That's bad. But I think the French was the last.
They were the last ones, yeah.
You like first world country to do an atomic test.
If you saw the movie Godzilla from 1998, that's what caused it.
The Jean Reno movie?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, God.
That movie is bad.
It's so terrible. Ugh. But of course, North Korea does atomic tests all the time. South Africa did an atomic test. Israel did an atomic test. Australia did an atomic test.
Really?
Yeah. Emu Field.
I think that it was Britain testing it there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right.
Because I'm trying to think of all the nations that have had nuclear weapons in history. The U.S., the USSR, the U.K., France, China. Those are the five.
India,
Pakistan, the seven.
They must have tested it somewhere.
Israel, not acknowledged. South Africa did have them at one point. There have been other countries with nuclear weapons programs. Kazakhstan and the Ukraine, after the Soviet Union fell, became nuclear powers because there's haven't been nukes there. Yeah.
What was the deal with those nuclear weapons? Did they sell them back to Russia?
I think Russia reclaimed them. I don't know.
Just gave them back?
I guess so.
That whole thing, the end of the Soviet Union, is just the Wild West of just
the Federation of Independent States, FIS.
The people just deciding that I'm going to buy this factory. I'm just, going to spend pennies on the dollar for this multi-million-dollar factory. It's just mine now. I own it.
Oh, Russia.
Just crazy. But that's what happens when you start from scratch with like a capitalist system.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. But I bet you they had a lot of artillery available.
Oh, well, I mean, it's Russia after all, so they're very big.
Love a good 122, 155, 152, 122 millimeter, 152 millimeter.
I mean, being an artilleryman in the Soviet Army, probably pretty good.
Probably a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people in it, and also you're not at the front lines, Like a lot of the whole not one step back thing is very exaggerated for movies, but it's still not great. It's not good. You know, like in the attack on Berlin, like Zhukov just having people march into minefields. We don't have time to clear them. Just run.
Jeez. That's the Soviet army for you. Red Army.
Yeah. You are a resource. You're not a person.
Yeah.
And
Penal battalions.
Penal battalions. The Germans had penal battalions too, you know.
Of course they did, yeah.
Yeah.
That all the division that was a penal was the 999th Infantry Division in Africa.
Oh.
There's a whole division that was a penal battalion, basically.
What are they, political prisoners or?
They were like misbehaving soldiers and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And probably some political prisoners. Go defend Tunisia.
Go defend Tunisia.
Holy Tunisian soil.
Operation Torch.
North Africa is fascinating.
Yes. It gets overlooked a lot.
It does.
I mean, it's a sideshow. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's still very interesting. It's an interesting part.
The U.S. Army got his butt whooped in a lot of it. Read An Army at Dawn by Rick Atkinson. I highly recommend his 3 books, The Army at Dawn, Day of Battle, and Guns at Last Light. They're fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But An Army at Dawn won the Pulitzer. And not only are his books awesome, they're really well written. He shows like how much of a disaster North Africa was and how we kind of eked out a victory and we learned a lot of important lessons.
Yeah.
They were still using Lee tanks then.
Oh, terrible.
Make your tank big profile.
As tall as possible, but lots of crappy guns. Not one good one, but lots of very bad ones.
Yeah, 37 millimeter and a 75 millimeter, but the 75 millimeter can't. Okay.
What is it? A Charbie? Isn't that another one where it's like
Charbie? Yeah,
one in the
French
base.
had that. Yeah, the 75 millimeter on the front with not very much latitude to move, and then a smaller gun atop in the turret.
You know what has both a Charbie and a Lee tank in it?
What?
That dumb movie that I showed you.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, the interesting thing about the Lee tank is that we would send them in Lend-Lease to the Soviets, and they didn't like them. They called it like a coffin for 7. That was like the nickname because it was a bad tank.
It's terrible, and that's by Soviet standards. The Soviets had really horrible tanks at the beginning of World War II.
My favorite one is the T-27, the one that had like 7 turrets on it. It's like 18-person crew.
It's just gigantic.
Yeah, it's like it's like a little, like a land dreadnought, you know?
Yeah. A boxcar or whatever.
Yeah. Some of those early tanks, man, it's crazy.
Just figuring it out. Just trying to figure out like what works and what doesn't work. Just throw everything at the
More
wall.
turrets, damn you. You look at an early Stuart tank, and they had like multiple small turrets just for machine guns on it.
What?
It's like, well, what's the point of this?
Like how many? There's not that big of a crew. It's very small.
Well, they were bigger. It was like 7-person crew because there was like 2 machine gun turrets on either side.
So you're not filling up the space with like this gun and the ammunition.
No, you're filling it up with machine guns.
More machine guns.
An early Sherman, if you look at it, there was the bow gun that was in the movable pintle, and then you had 2 other guns just sticking out. 2 other Brownings. It's like, why do you need that many of them in the front? What?
To suppress them? I don't know.
Oh, that's weird. Also, they used a lot of early tanks used rivets in it, which is a problem because when it gets hit, those rivets pop out. So
the Lee tank, infamously.
Yeah.
Infamously.
Or the Grant if you're British.
Well, yeah,
different turret.
Sure.
I've seen I've seen Monty's Grant. The one, that famous picture of him where he's sitting in it and he's looking through the binoculars. He's got the binoculars in his hand.
Yeah.
Old Monty.
Good old Monty. A man with no social skills at all.
Not really.
He invited Bradley to Christmas dinner and gave him an apple. Here's your food, Brad. Here you go.
Lived until 1976, though.
If
you watch the World at War, the early 70s documentary about it, they interview Montgomery.
What?
And also they interview at the time Dönitz was still alive. He died in like 1980, so it's like, they're talking to Dönitz. And I think they put his title is like, because remember, he was like the head of Germany for a brief time.
Reichsfuhrer.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, what? Oh my goodness. All these notable people were still alive. They're old, but they're still alive by that point. And it's just like, what? Bradley's in it, I think. I don't know if Eisenhower died in 1969, but he was in very bad health by the end of his life, too.
He's a pretty old guy. Otto Skorzeny lived for a really long time. Did lots of mercenary stuff.
Yeah,
all
for the
over
Mossad included at one point.
place. Yes. Worked for Egypt, all sorts of people. Got to eat.
That's right. You've seen The Boys from Brazil. Someone's got to be. What a strange film.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like the movie Marathon Man made me afraid of dentists.
Yes, and Nazis as well.
Yeah, Nazi dentists particularly.
Nazi dentists particularly.
Laurence Olivier was in both those movies. He's a
Really?
Nazi hunter in one. He's a Nazi hunter in Boys from Brazil, and then he's the doctor, Der Onkel, in Marathon Man.
He's also the doctor in Sky Captain, The World of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Dr. Totemkopf.
Yeah, remarkably appearing in a movie like 20 years after he died.
Well, it's because he was so passionate about this film. That he's
Yeah.
like, the script is so good.
yeah, because when I think of passion in films, I think of Sky Captain and The World of Tomorrow.
Please use my likeness and my voice in this film that you're going to make 20 years from now, because the technology just isn't ready yet for these dumb, like Iron Giant robots. And,
And then
ray guns.
P-40 Tomahawks and
ornithopters,
and sky carriers and
carriers.
dumb.
Very silly. Airships.
Yeah, airships, another good idea.
Airships dropped bombs on London during World War One.
They did, yeah. Zeppelins.
Zeppelins, baby
A
killers.
couple people got Victoria Crosses for shooting down Zeppelins. Usually they would drop bombs on them.
From above?
Yeah.
That's smart. Very nice. I like that.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's got to stop those damn Zeppelins. Yeah. And then they actually used something more effective towards the end of the war, which is like the Gotha bombers, which were actual bombers, planes. Those were way more effective. Zeppelins were...
Not so good.
I know.
Yeah.
S.M. Sterling will probably be angry at us for saying that.
How dare you? He's written a new book. The Black Chamber is the name of it.
Oh.
I was thinking about reading it. It's World War One. It's an alternate World War One.
Ooh.
Where America has conquered Mexico and all sorts of wacky stuff like that. And I was reading the summary, and it's like, such and such is a female Black Chamber agent. It's like an intelligence organization. And she's on a transatlantic airship ride to the German Empire. And it's like, oh, no.
Oh, no, damn it.
Stop it, please. No more.
No more of your airships.
But more artillery. Let's think here.
The French 75, classic.
Classic? Okay, is that a World War One?
That's a World War One. It's that quick firing artillery the French used. That's the gun that Jake Featherston uses a copy of in
Oh, when he fires over open sights.
Over Open Sights.
At both his own men and the enemy.
Yeah, what a way to build morale. Oh, you're running away. Let me blow you away too.
Not one step back, damn it. Standard die orders.
What else is there? Oh, what can you fire out of artillery? Grape shot.
That's true.
Canister. Chain shot.
Ball. Take their mast down.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of ships, bombardment by battleships. That's
That's
artillery.
right. Well, of course, we're the biggest guns, the biggest form of artillery. Battleships.
Battleships.
Yeah. 14-inch, 15-inch, 16-inch, 18-inch guns on the Yamato.
Because that way you can have these huge guns and you can still move.
Yeah.
Unlike, railway guns, they can only move back and forth.
Yeah.
The V3 can't move at all. But this, it is mobile warfare still. Yeah, yeah.
They still use battleships in the Gulf War as distraction. I think we may have mentioned that. Apparently, if you do like a full broadside from a battleship, like the ship will actually move horizontally.
Huh.
Yeah, even if it's moving.
Well, it's like the A-10 Thunderbolt or whatever. When it's firing, it's like anti-tank gun.
Yeah, yeah.
It actually pushes it back in the air.
You heard a recording of that firing?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like...
And then a couple seconds later, and just...
They use depleted uranium in a lot of those shells. I'm trying to think what else. Artillery. It's good.
Yeah, it works. It works quite well.
Yeah. It's got more accurate. Forward observers, stuff like that.
Well, just ask the commanding general on Okinawa how good artillery is. Simon Bolivar Buckner.
Got killed by it.
He got killed by it,
Leonidas Polk, who was a Confederate general in the Civil War, was decapitated by an artillery shell.
Is that the, they couldn't hear us over...
They couldn't hit an elephant at this distance? No, that was John Sedgwick, who got shot through the head by a sniper.
But Leonidas Polk, huh?
Yeah, he was an Episcopal bishop before the war and then became a general and then got decapitated by an artillery shell.
Oh, no. Was it a like a howitzer or a forward firing?
I guess it would be more akin to like a cannon of the time. Yeah, I guess. Because there used to be a difference between like cannon and howitzer, because a howitzer would fire up, while a cannon was more direct fire, kind of.
My grandfather was in artillery when he was in the National Guard in the 1950s.
Oh.
They like trained him on all sorts of stuff.
Get those damn Soviets back.
There's a lot of math involved in artillery.
Oh, it is. It is. It's a science. It's a science.
Yeah, zoning in on stuff.
What made Napoleon great was artillery. He was a master of artillery.
That's right. Because he got into the academy because he was technically nobility. Because they had taken Corsica like a year before he was born. So his parents became noble, and then so did he.
Bonaparte.
Bonaparte.
Really more Italian than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, we got corrected about how Corsican is not really Italian, but, you know, there's similarities, okay? Gosh, it's not the same as French, all right?
Well, hell, the French they speak in different areas isn't the same. It's not like the English you speak in the South versus the English spoken up north is the same.
Well, like, what is it, Occitan or Occitan or whatever?
Occitan.
Because the reason is because they didn't say we. They said och or os or whatever the hell.
Really?
Yeah. That's why they called them Occitans. But that was a widespread thing until just not that long ago.
Yeah.
Like even 200 years ago, you'd be from France and you speak French completely differently than some other guy.
Mm-hmm. German, I mean, you know.
Or you'd speak German or Italian or Spanish or all kinds of Basque, you know, all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's why there became something like Latin became a big language in science, because it became an international language, because you at least speak it, you know, you could speak that.
Or the Catholic Church, you know, in the same way. It was universal, and then it became the opposite of universal.
Yeah.
It became something that only a very small section of society would even understand.
Yeah.
Which is why I understand that they stopped their mass in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so people could understand it, so they weren't just sitting there.
Yeah, just waiting for it to be over. Vobiscum, I know what that means.
Yeah.
All right.
Pax Vobiscum. We're done.
Pater. Okay. Yeah, I know what that. Recognize that.
I think what else artillery?
Artillery related.
Well, we've talked for an hour about it, so maybe we're good.
We may be close to being good. Is there?
There apparently was an American pilot in World War II who would use anti-tank stuff by putting bazookas on like a little Piper club and like would attack, you know, here, fire this bazooka.
That reminds me, I was reading Bevor's Berlin book, and they were talking about how they had these Panzerjagd units, which, Panzer Hunter, that sounds very, very impressive. No, what it was is that you'd be riding a bicycle with two Panzerfaust mounted on either side. It's just, let me zip on behind this T-34 and then...
Oh my God.
It's just insane.
That's crazy.
Insanity. Volkstrom.
Panzer Shrek.
Panzer Shrek. There's a picture of Idi Amin holding a Panzer Shrek.
Oh my God.
What are you doing? Where'd you get that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the bazooka was the American invention, and the Germans were like, we can make this better. And they did. And
because they abandoned lots of them in North Africa.
Yeah.
They came across them and was like, what the hell is this? How can we make this work?
It's just a rocket, that's all.
It's just a rocket.
Yeah. I hope this was informative.
Yeah, I hope so too. If you'd like to, email us and tell us some more about artillery, just in case we missed anything important, you can contact us at talkernatehistory@gmail.com and, give us feedback, give us suggestions, or just say whatever you want to say.
This is Matt signing off.
And this is Max signing off.
Have a good day, guys.